This is Optimal Finance Daily, episode 1346. Best Non-Financial Skills and Mindset Traits Which Pay Off in Everyday Life, Part 2, by Monika of MissionMoney.co.uk. And I'm your host and personal finance enthusiast, Diana Merriam. This is the show where I narrate posts from thought leaders in personal finance every single day of the year in 10 minutes or less. Thank you for joining me today and every day as we take charge of our financial futures by educating ourselves on the many facets of money. This show is actually one of 6 shows in our network covering different topics like personal development, health, and relationships. So if you like narration-style podcasts, be sure to search for Optimal Living Daily wherever you're hearing this and check out our other shows. Today's post is actually a continuation from yesterday. So if you're new here, it'd be best to listen to yesterday's episode first. But if you're all caught up, let's hear part 2 and continue optimizing your life. Best Non-Financial Skills and Mindset Traits Which Pay Off in Everyday Life, Part 2, by Monika of MissionMoney.co.uk. Ability to paint walls, unblock drains, and spot house problems early. I remember that one time my mom and aunties decided to wallpaper the kitchen and I spent the weekend mixing the glue. And that other time when my uncle and dad rewired all the outdoor buildings and I learned that electricity is really dangerous. And that time I spent a weekend on my knees trying to get plaster out of the carpet because a relative didn't cover it properly when they were working on the ceiling. And that other time when my friend accidentally flooded the kitchen and I spent the next 2 hours mopping, hoping that there's no water damage to the walls. And that other time when my parents were updating the old porch and I got to lay some of the new roof tiles. And that one time when my uncles dismantled the old wooden staircase and put in a new one and I got to use the big saw. And that, by the way, I didn't grow up in a weird self-building commune. I just grew up in a really old house that needed a lot of work. This is a curse and a blessing. Living in an old house was just a tad traumatizing if you ask me. But learning how to maintain a building, taking care of its insides and the decorative order have been incredibly useful. Now, instead of calling out a plumber, I'm comfortable unblocking drains and resolving airlocks. If I want to redecorate a room, I'm fine saving a bunch by painting it myself. And as it turns out, my relentless quest for a house that is not falling on my head also benefits my neighbors because I simply don't let go and will pursue whoever needs to be pursued until the work gets done. Yes, once it took me almost 2 years to have a tree cut down, right in time to stop it messing with the whole building's foundation. A strange mix of scarcity mindset and detachment from the fear of loss. I'm starting to believe that what I'm about to talk about is unique to people who grew up in uncertain times. And what I mean is this. I often find myself thinking that I never have enough in my emergency fund, or I never have enough in my retirement savings, or I never have enough in my wardrobe. And yet, if I lose my wallet or phone, I don't grieve for that loss. Because while I never have enough, I also have so much that a material loss can always be replaced because most of them are not unique. Why being a nutcase like that is useful, you might ask? Because if I never have enough, in particular money, then I'm able to prioritize growing my wealth over things which hold less interest for me. And if I happen to risk losing some of this money or a physical item, I don't mind because I managed to obtain it once before. And therefore, empirically, I know that it can be replaced easily. Ability to accurately estimate my abilities against a task. And where needed, willingness to bring in professionals. My parents, ridiculously resourceful and skilled as they are, did not hesitate to ask for help. My dad knows nothing about wiring, but my uncle, rest in peace, knew quite a bit and therefore ended up being the brain behind the successful rewiring project. I know nothing about rewiring other than what the current regulations are, and therefore I hired a company to rewire my flat. I know nothing about fixing walls, so my best friend's husband popped over and replastered my living room wall. And when in work I was planning an augmented reality project, I had a tech lead, developer, and a creative director on my project board. However, if a task seems within my reach, I'll learn about it and I'll push myself to do it. For example, when I didn't agree with my work's financial advisor's recommendation, I found a pension pot which is better for me than the one he was proposing. Or instead of paying £15 to the vet every 2 weeks, I learned to trim my cat's claws at home. Green fingers. Throughout my childhood, I'd occasionally help out either in my mother's or grandmother's garden. These gardens were typical at the time, small patches of land next to the house full of vegetables. Aside from these, every autumn the kids would go into the field and pick dugout potatoes, beets, and all sorts of other bounty grown on the farm. Being so close to your food supply really teaches you how to take care of the plants around you. Now, one of my favorite side hustles is growing plants and selling them on Facebook Marketplace or Gumtree for a small profit. Over the year, this time-consuming but very pleasant activity brings in about 50 to 60 pounds. I also grow my own herbs such as rosemary, basil, and parsley. These translate into small savings of around 50 to 80 pence per week, which is as much as Mr. and I would spend on a pack of cut herbs on average. Most importantly, this hobby also gives me a tiny element of control over my environment and the satisfaction of sustaining a trace control over what goes into my food. You just listened to part 2 of the post titled, Best Non-Financial Skills and Mindset Traits Which Pay Off in Everyday Life by Monika of MissionMoney.co.uk. I have to second Monika's sentiment here about asking for help with the things you might not know how to do yourself. Just this week, I discovered a slow leak under my sink and wasn't sure what to do about it. Luckily, my handy boyfriend was over and was able to fix it in less than an hour. What a relief! He really seemed to enjoy being my knight in shining armor, and I enjoyed showering him with appreciation and giving him a shout out on this podcast because I know he's listening. I know sometimes it can be tough to ask for help because we don't want to be a burden on the people around us. But just think about how nice it feels when you're able to help a friend with the unique skill set you have. By asking for help when you need it, you give others the opportunity to enjoy those good feelings as well. It reminds me of a time that my neighbor's cat was stuck up in a tree for over 18 hours and they weren't sure what to do about it. I went over to help troubleshoot, and after making a number of calls, discovered that the fire department or even animal control weren't able to help. But I ended up calling a tree service company who climbed that tree and rescued the cat at no charge. It was incredibly gratifying to be able to help my neighbors and the cat. I also documented the suspenseful rescue and posted it all over social media, which resulted in great PR for the tree service company. Sharing is caring, my friends, so be generous with those around you and ask for help when you need it. And that's another episode and weekend of Optimal Finance Daily in the books. Thank you for your support and for listening every day. I'll be back with more posts for you on Monday. So have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow where your optimal life awaits.